Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for another round of our financial well-being Q&A series with none other than Armando Roman, our board of director and treasurer of our board. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having
Today,
me.
great. Today we'll go ahead and kind of focus on cash flow. So Armando will provide you all with a little presentation on that, and then we'll open it up with the Q&A chat afterwards. So any questions that you may have, make sure to ask in the chat box, or if you're brave enough, make sure to also unmute yourself and ask away. So I'll go ahead and go through just a couple housekeeping rules, and we'll go ahead and get started. So I just asked that if you aren't if you aren't speaking, I'm sorry, make sure to mute yourself. Also, if you have any distracted video, make sure to turn that off. I would suggest that as well. Any questions in the chat box, you may enter those there, or if you have any sensitive questions that you wish to remain anonymous, make sure to send them directly to me via the chat box feature, or you could send me an email. I'll make sure to ask Armando. The presentation is being recorded, and you'll go ahead and receive the webinar recording in our post-event email shortly. So with that, I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and I'll go ahead and let Armando take it away from here. Thank you so much, Armando.
Good, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for the time here. What I'd like to do is, make this useful, of course, for all the people who are on this webinar. So I'm going to give you just a little, 1-minute background on who I am and my perspective, so that as you have questions or thoughts, just ask me. The whole purpose of this session today, as Elizabeth and Christina and I began to plan this, the whole purpose was to share information with you that will help you get through this pandemic and shutdown and reopening. The economy, of course, is in a place we've never been before. We don't know how long this is going to last. We don't know what it's going to look like when we get to the end, or if it will ever really get back to normal. There's so much unknown. But the best thing to do is to plan and have some kind of a plan in place. So what I thought I would touch on this morning is cash. Last time we got together a couple of weeks ago, what I did is I went through and threw a lot of information at you, probably way too much information, but I threw a lot of information at you to give you an idea of the types of topics that people ask me about and why people hire me to help them with things. So for my background, I am a CPA. I had my own CPA firm for 14 years. I sold that firm in 2007. Now it's been almost 14 years that I've sold that firm. But I've taken that experience as a CPA in public practice, where I did taxes and help people with business consulting and that. I take that experience, I use it every day in my business today. And the way I help people today is I help people keep and grow their money. Many of our clients are business owners, and many of them are not. But I'd say probably about half are business owners. And having the experience of being a CPA in public practice years ago, again, I use that all the time. So I give that to you as an example of where I'm coming from, my perspective. People sometimes hire us to manage their money, but really people hire us to help them with their financial planning. And what they get from us is the sense and feeling that we've addressed everything that has to get addressed, so that when they're thinking of their own family and or their business, they feel like they've covered all the bases and they're doing as well as they can, whatever the circumstances are. So I just got hired last week by a new client who's in his early 60s. He intends to work about 5 more years. And so what we're helping that family do is look at what are the assets, what risks might come around that they maybe didn't plan on. How do we take what they've got, the house, the rental property, etc. What can we do with that to give them the lifestyle that they want from this point till they die, which is probably going to be, 40 years or so. You never know how long you're going to live. But I hope that gives you a sense of how we might be able to help and the questions that you can ask me about. So I'm going to touch on right now cash for your business. I'm going to go through a couple of things pretty quickly, and then I'll open up for questions in about 5 minutes here. So when you think about cash, there's an expression, cash is king. And what that means is when you have cash, you get to make the rules and you have a lot more choices. So with where we are today, towards the latter part of July, um, a lot of a lot of people are wondering, is unemployment going to stop July 31st, or is it going to go back to the old, the low amount, or is it going to stay where it is? We don't know because Congress hasn't really made a definitive decision as far as I know. But I'm using it to make a point that when you have cash, you have more choices. So for a business, cash is also king. Cash allows you to pay the rent, to pay for your employees, and to buy goods that you can sell to your customers. So a couple of things I'll touch on. If you have a business right now today and you have any credit lines that are there, banks like to lend you money and increase your credit when you have money and when you don't need it. So it doesn't cost you anything to get on the phone with your bank today and just say, hey, I've got a line of credit with you. I'd like to increase that limit. And the conversation will go something like this. Okay, Mr. Roman, how much more do you want to get? Well, my line is $1 million or $100,000. I want to bump it up as much as I can. And what they'll tell you is, well, if we bump it up past a certain limit, you have to give us tax returns and financials. So then what you ask them is, okay, so how much can I bump it up without providing tax returns and financials? Because I don't have all that right now today. And they might say, we can increase it 10%. Great, I'll take the 10% and take what they offer you. I would do the same thing on your credit cards because credit cards work the same way. Call up that toll-free number on your credit card and just say, hey, I want to increase the line on my credit card. Well, how much do you want? It's the same conversation. And just say, well, how much can I get without giving you tax returns and financials? And just tell them, you know what, they're on extension. I don't have them yet. What can you do right now on the phone today? And they'll bump it up. All you have to do is ask. And even if you don't see that you might need that money in the short term, that credit, it's good to have it because what if you do? You know, what if you have an emergency and you really need that for your business or for the family? That's when those credit lines are really, really important. I would also say to protect your credit score. So your credit score is how banks measure, are you someone they can lend money to and you'll pay them back? That's really what the credit score is talking about. Are you credit worthy? Can they trust you to pay you back? If they don't trust you to pay you back or to pay them back, they're not going to lend you the money in the first place. So you have to look trustworthy on paper, and that's what the credit score, the FICO score, that's what that speaks to. So it's a good time to get online. You can get your credit score for free. I mean, your credit report for free 3 times a year. Just get online and look for it. You know, just Google free credit score, and you'll be able to find it and see what's on there. You might have old credit that's been there for years. You just kind of forgot about it. And if you close out some of those accounts, that might help your score go up. You might have some unresolved bills or things that you just kind of forgot about. But a good thing is to take a look at it because sometimes you look at those credit reports and you might find that there's something on there that has nothing to do with you. It belongs to somebody else. So what do? Well, you clean it up. You contact the credit reporting agencies, there are 3 of them, and you tell them, this is not mine, doesn't belong to me, you get it out of there. Because the cleaner that credit report is, the more willing the banks and credit card companies are to lend you money. Again, even if you don't need that money today, you might need it tomorrow because life is very unpredictable. I'll touch on just a home refi real quickly. If you're thinking about refinancing your home, rates, of course, right now are really fantastic. And you can get a 30-year mortgage or a 10, 15, 20-year mortgage, kind of whatever you want. But when you're thinking about that, there are points, and you can pay those points up front and finance them. It's a whole nother segment, really. But I bring this up because if you have a home with equity in it, a refi might be a good way for you to get some cash out if you need cash right now today. And like I said, right now we don't know what the future holds. Today we are at what, July 21st. And over the next 6 months, what's going to happen with the economy, with everything, we don't really know. We really just don't know where all this is going to go. So even if you feel comfortable today and you feel like you're in a good, solid position with your business and your family and the home and all that, you still might want to increase those credit lines today in case you need them. You might want to think about refinancing that home to pull some cash out right now while you can, because if your company suddenly starts to go downhill, well, the banks won't give you any money. They'll lend you money when you look like a good credit risk, when you're making money, when everything is solid. So once things start to slip and crumble, if they do, that's not when they're going to give you money. You want to get that money and that line of credit while everything is still good and strong and stable. And I hope that makes sense. A couple of quick other things on here. Um, what I've seen happen before sometimes, when a business owner starts to get short on cash, they will do things that they really should not do. And I've seen this too many times. Sometimes a business owner will take the sales tax money they've collected and they'll keep it and use it for their business. Don't do that. That's not only bad for cash flow and bad, kind of illegal bad, but it puts you in a really bad situation because that money was never yours. Any sales tax money that your company collects, it belonged to the customer. You simply act as an agent to collect it, and then you pay it to City of Phoenix, to the Arizona Department of Revenue, or to any other city that it belongs to. It's never your money. So if you keep that sales tax money and you use it for your business, when the city and the state find out, they really come down hard on you because it was never your money. Don't do that with payroll taxes either, because that is even worse, because that's federal, and you don't want to mess with federal. Income taxes, make estimated payments. I spoke with a business owner last week who told me he got his 2019 tax returns done, and he had to write a check for $24,000 to pay for the 2019 income taxes. He didn't make any estimated payments. So fortunately, he has the cash, he could write the check, and he got it done. But what if he didn't have the money? You know, it'd be terrible to have to come out of that after the fact. So fortunately, he was able to do that. But that's why you want to make estimated tax payments along the way every quarter, so that you don't get behind and you don't end up paying extra penalties, extra interest. It just starts to dig a hole that can be very, very difficult to get out of. So Elizabeth, I'll leave it with that. And are there questions that are coming up? I don't see on my screen. I think my screen's a little bit not right, but that's okay. Are there questions that are coming up?
Um, no, I haven't seen any. So now we'll go ahead and open it up to our Q&A session. That was really great, Armando. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So any questions, feel free to use the chat box, or I believe you can raise your hand and we'll go ahead and start unmuting people. You want to be brave and ask away as well. So now's the time. Any questions that you may have?
So as those are coming in, what I'll do is I'm going to touch on unemployment. I've had a lot of questions about this recently. The law that was signed into law on March 27th, the CARES Act, it extended the unemployment benefits. So unemployment in Arizona is very, very low. It's about $240 a week. What the CARES Act did is it added an extra $600 a week to that amount. So with what I've seen, and maybe it's different now, but what I saw last week when I looked at the unemployment, it is set to expire on July 31st, meaning in August, if you were getting, say, $840 a week, in August, that check is going to be $240. It's going to take a big drop unless Congress extends, or unless the president signs a new law or something to keep those benefits high. So money in unemployment, it is scheduled to drop starting the first week of August.
Great. We have a question come in. So in regard to a line of credit, is it best to go to the bank you bank with, or should we go to the SBA first?
The thing that you want to keep in mind is the bank that you're currently with, they know you the most. And they already have information about you, and it's going to be a shorter closing cycle to go to the bank who already knows you. So if the bank you're currently with knows you only a little bit, then it doesn't really matter who you go to. But if you have had a relationship with them for quite a while, and maybe you've got some lines of credit with them, maybe you bought your house through them, maybe you financed a car through them, if you have different accounts with that bank, I'd go to that bank because they're the ones who know you the most, and they're more likely to be able to say yes sooner. Other part of your question, I'm looking at my screen now about SBA. SBA is a guarantor. They don't really necessarily lend you the money. They are the guarantor. So you would go to get an SBA loan, like a traditional 7A loan, you would go to your bank. Your bank does all the credit, paperwork, whatever, and then the SBA will guarantee that bank that if you don't pay or if you default, the SBA will pay the bank back. So the SBA is not lending you the money for that 7A loan. They're guaranteeing that the bank is going to get paid back either from you directly or from SBA. And I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, ask or send me a chat here or something.
Great. And
Okay.
I think the other part of her question, what is considered a good rate?
Rates right now are very, very low. So uh, business rates are still, I don't know right now today what a good business rate is, but the last time I looked, which was about 2 months ago, somewhere around maybe 5.5 to 6.5 seemed like it was a decent rate. Interest rates have not changed, and there's no expectation that interest rates will change in the next 6 months or maybe even 10 years, who knows? But what I would do is check with your bank on what their rates are. Sometimes they'll want to give you what's called a floating rate loan. So they'll attach your interest rate to the prime rate or to the LIBOR rate, and whatever those rates are, they'll add another 1.5 or say 2% to it, and that's your rate. So those rates are sometimes the best thing to do. But whenever you can lock in a very low rate for say a 5 or 10 year loan, then you're guaranteed that you have that low rate for the whole time. Because if rates did jump up in 6 months or a year and you have a floating rate loan, then suddenly your cost, your monthly payment back to the bank, that's suddenly going to go up. Not that you did anything, but interest rates changed and your payment also changes. So locking in a fixed rate, a fixed low rate is often the best thing to do when you can. You can't always do that, but when you can, that's that's what I would rather see is a locked in low fixed rate.
Great. And as we get more questions, Armando, I know we kind of briefly chatted before going live about the stimulus checks that we all received
Yep.
from the government, and also the CARES Act that some businesses received. Can you kind of give us some updates or give everyone updates as far as what you think might happen with those specifically for tax purposes?
Yep. So when the CARES Act was signed on March 27th, it was signed very, very quickly, and the intent, the idea that was behind all that was, hey, we just shut down the economy in the whole country. People can't work. Let's get some money from the federal government into the hands of the people so that they can still have some money to buy groceries and that kind of thing. So it was done very, very quickly on March 27th. I was really impressed and surprised how quickly our federal government did something. So I'm glad they did that. Because it was done so quickly, there were a lot of questions that were not answered. And one of those questions that I heard probably on March 28th, when I started talking about this CARES Act, the questions that I heard were, well, when I get my $1,200, is it going to be taxable? At that time, I didn't know whether it would or not, but I believed that it was going to be taxable. And really, there are two things. there's that stimulus check that individuals received because of that act. I would expect that that we're all gonna pay taxes on that money. That's what I would expect. I don't know that for sure, but I do know that I don't remember any time in history where the federal government gave money to people and did not expect to collect taxes on it. I don't think that's ever happened in history. So I fully expect that that check is going to be included in your taxable income. That's what I expect. I might be wrong. Let me go to the business side. If you have a business and you got one of those PPP loans, which many companies did, IRS did come out and say something very clear about that. And what they said is, if you got a PPP loan from the CARES Act and you got this money for your business, the intent when that was signed into law on March 27th was that that would not be taxable income to the business. That was the intent. But IRS came back at some point, I think it was about 3 weeks ago, and they said, we're not going to tax that money if you got the PPP loan. But if you use that money to pay for any of your expenses in your business, you cannot deduct those expenses. So let's say that you got a loan for $100,000 from the PPP, and you use that $100,000 to pay for rent and payroll and all those expenses. Well, now you cannot deduct that $100,000 as a normal business expense. So what is the net result? The net result is it's included in your business profits and you will pay tax on that money. So they kind of got to the same place by using a back door. But regardless, if you have a business and you got a PPP loan, you should expect to pay, you should expect to include that as part of the business's profit and pay taxes on it. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Evelyn was asking if we receive the PPP loan, will we need to pay taxes on it, even if it's considered forgivable?
I would say yes. Yes. Forgivable means you don't have to pay them back. That's all forgivable means. But you still got the money and you still used it for your business. So yes, I would expect that if you got $100,000 in your business, I would expect that's going to be additional profit and you're going to pay tax on it just as if you had made more profit in your company. It's going to behave the same way and you'll pay tax on it the same way.
Okay. And something that I just thought of, are the taxes going to be the same taxes that we usually get? Do you expect those taxes to be more or less of a percentage?
I would expect the taxes are going to be the same. That's a good question, though. I hadn't thought about that at all. But when the tax laws were revised in 2008, those are good till 2026 when they're scheduled to change. I've seen nothing that makes me think that that money would be taxed at a different rate. But that is a very good idea because if they did that, they could decrease the tax rate if they wanted to. I think that would be kind of a good halfway solution. I mean, to kind of meet halfway, you know, IRS versus the business owners. I think that'd be a great idea. I've not heard of that being done at all, though.
Okay. And looks like we have another question. So does this apply tax-wise if we receive the grant from an organization? So some of our members receive our business success grants. So she's asking if that applies to these type of grants that we also provided.
You know, I know the grants you're talking about because I was very excited when our chamber was able to do that. And I was very excited that we were able to receive money that we could do that because that was a real direct benefit that the chamber put out there for our membership. So I was really happy to see that. As I think about that, I don't know. I don't know if that money is going to be taxable to your business or not. And I should know that answer, but I don't know. You'll have to kind of figure that out after the fact, but I don't know. You know, the chamber has a 501c3 and a C6, but you're a for-profit business, you got a grant. I'm not sure. I don't know how to answer the question, I'm sorry.
we'll go ahead and leave that answer for our next our next round of webinar. Um, does anyone else have any questions? Don't be afraid to ask or email me directly, and I could have those questions answered for you. Now's the time.
So I'm gonna, as that's happening, I'm gonna talk about independent contractors versus employees. One thing that companies will often do to save some money, tax money, or overall cash in their business, is rather than having employees, they like to have contractors. Because with a contractor doing work, the company is not responsible for payroll taxes. So I would expect that many companies right now today that have had to let employees go and that are trying to get their company profitable again, I would expect many right now today are considering to hire independent contractors instead of employees. And that can be a good strategy. You've got to make sure you follow those rules though, because IRS used to have 21 points, and there was a list of 21 items, and you had to look at each of those 21 items when you looked at that contractor to determine is that person a contractor or is that person an employee? And this has been a big sticky area for IRS for a long, long time, at least 25 years that I know of. So if you're thinking about that right now today, that will save the business some money by having independent contractors, but you want to be very careful how you structure that relationship so that you really are treating them like independent contractors and you really don't have to pay the payroll taxes on those people.
Awesome, thank you. No
I,
other questions.
I have a quick question, Elizabeth. This is Christina. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
This may be a little bit off topic, Armando, but I'll ask it anyway since we just went through tax time. Are there any tools? I know the best probably way for us to plan financially and for our taxes is for, sorry for the noise in my background here, is for us to have a financial planner or consultant like yourself, but are there any apps or tools that we should be using that make life easier if I'm on a budget? Maybe it's a QuickBooks or something like that that you recommend that'll help us
Yes, and
keep
Christina,
track of our expenses.
Yeah, Christina, I'm so glad you asked me that question because this weekend I was talking with my son who is 24. He just moved to Ohio, and so now he's, independent by himself, and he's having to make sure that his income is going to be enough for all the expenses. So I was just telling my son that there are apps out there that are designed to help you with your budget, just to maintain a budget. So I got online this weekend to look, and I didn't look at many because I didn't spend a lot of time on it, but there is an app called Mint, M-I-N-T, like spearmint, or, I guess spearmint's the only mint I can think of. Mint you might put in your tea, I suppose. But anyway, Mint is an app out there that is part of Intuit. Intuit is the company that owns QuickBooks. I've used QuickBooks probably 20 years now, and it's a really, really, really good accounting program for small businesses. The majority of small businesses in the US use QuickBooks. Well, the company that owns us, Intuit, they came out with Mint. So I took a look at Mint over the weekend to see what it was, and I didn't actually start it. I looked at it, I downloaded it to see what it was, and it looks like you can connect that to your bank account so that you can feed into it data about how you're spending. But there are apps out there. A lot of people who are maybe like me, a little bit older, maybe we're more comfortable with Excel spreadsheets or with using QuickBooks. That's a good way as well to keep track. But the whole idea, no matter how you do it, even if you're just using, the good old-fashioned, pen and paper, even if you're using that, you just want to keep track of what you're spending. Some people use envelopes. One envelope holds the rent check, another one holds money for the car expenses. That's great. It doesn't really matter what you use. You just want to use something so that you keep track of the money that you're receiving every month and the money that you're spending. And a friend of mine 30 years ago, he had a little book about the size of my phone. and he would just keep track of there he'd keep it in his car, and he would just keep track. If he stopped to get a cup of coffee, and he would just add all that up. At the end of the week, then you just add up all those expenses, and then you'll see where you're really spending your money. And I would say do it for the whole month. So there are apps out there. Mint was the one that when I looked, it looked like it was the most popular, and it looked like it was independently rated as maybe the best one out there. I don't have direct firsthand experience actually using it, but anything you use is better than using nothing. So please use something. And Christina, thank you for asking that question.
Thank you.
Other questions or thoughts?
Looks like Imelda's just saying thank you so much for the valuable information. Thank you, Armando. This info was helpful. Armando, I have a question for you actually.
Certainly.
This morning on the news, as I was getting ready, they were talking about coins shortages. So I thought that was kind of interesting. You know, there's shortages of coins apparently. Um, do, do you know what that, you know, how that came about, or if that will actually affect us in any way of some sort?
You know, I've been hearing about that myself. My first thought was, why is there a coin shortage? I mean, really, why would there be a coin shortage? Are people hoarding coins like they hoarded toilet paper and food? I don't really know. Do I think it'll make any kind of a difference? I don't see why it would, because right now, I would say that most people I know are buying things online with a credit card or a debit card. They're not using actual cash. And even when they're going to a restaurant to pick up takeout food, they're still using a credit card. So the coins, I don't get it. I don't understand. I do know that the different what do they call it? The different places. There's several places, mints. There's several U.S. federal mints across the country that produce coins. And I went to tour the one in Denver about 5 years ago, and I think they make all the pennies for the country. And then they ship them in unmarked trucks on the freeway. They just put them in unmarked trucks and they take them to New York, San Francisco, Atlanta, LA. That's just how they do it. But I also know that right now many banks are closed in their lobbies. My own bank makes me use the drive-through. So I would think coins are being used less because we can't just go get a cup of coffee anymore like we used to. So I don't get the whole coin shortage. I don't see anything about it. But what I do know is when the banks get low on coins, they will request the mint to give them more, to print them more so they have coins on hand. I think it doesn't make any sense to me. I think it's another kind of herd behavior or just a rumor. I don't believe in the coin shortage, and maybe it's real. Maybe I'm a dinosaur. I've got my head in the sand. I just don't know, like an ostrich, right? But I just don't see how it has any impact at all. But it is making the news.
Claudia shared, I've actually been to many places where they are not taking cash, only electronic payments. An example, Whole Foods. So I guess, I mean, that would make sense. So we have another question. Thank you, Mabel. My small business has a business checking account with Wells Fargo. Is it better to go to a credit union rather than a major bank?
Well, that's a very good question. Thank you for asking that. Wells Fargo is one of the big banks. They're one of the big banks that got bailed out in 2008 when we had the last financial crisis. So the big banks have to do things that all the big banks do, and they're a lot more strict on what they can and cannot do. Even though you may love your banker and he or she is a great person, they might not be able to come through with a loan if you need it, because they have rules they have to follow. Your credit union is very different. Sometimes the credit union is a heck of a lot more flexible because credit unions typically are more local. They're much smaller organizations, and they're a lot more lax on what they can do. So I would say that if you go to any small bank or a local small credit union, you're going to find a very different banking experience. Now, sometimes as your company grows, you need that big bank as your company gets bigger and bigger, and you just have more volume going through. So the big banks are great for the big companies. For the small companies, sometimes they are the worst place to be because they're not designed for the company really that has under 10 employees. So you might find a local bank is going to give you a lot better service and a lot better pricing, and they're going to be able to accommodate you better. And your credit union is probably going to be the same thing as your small local bank rather than the big bank. And that's not to disparage Wells Fargo. The big banks are there for an intended purpose. They're really there for the bigger companies. That's how they're set up. So I hope that answers the question. If not, just send me a chat here so I can touch on whatever else might be there that I didn't address.
Armando, this is Christina again. I have another question for you on the topic of cash. So
Okay.
I feel like given our experience with the Hispanic market, that culturally, many Hispanics, especially maybe recent arrivals or immigrants, not just Hispanics, maybe any immigrants, have a tendency to have a mentality that it's great to store cash at home, right? I have lots of family members, especially during a pandemic time, that have lots of cash on hand because I'm afraid something's going to happen at my bank or it's not safe there. Is there anything you can share with us? Is that a good practice to have, or is that
Well,
nothing to fear about my bank, being I don't know what the right word is, being
yeah. Let me. I understand your question. Thank you for that question. I would say that you always want to have some level of cash on hand because cash is very helpful to have on hand. Whenever I make a road trip someplace, I make sure to have cash in my wallet. I normally have very little cash, but you want to have cash in case you need something. So I'd say, yeah, have some cash on hand, but I wouldn't have the mattress full of cash because, somebody breaks in or your house burns down, your money's gone and you're not going to get it back. You're just not going to get it back. So having some on hand, yes, definitely have some on hand so that you can pay somebody cash if you need it. The last time we had a run on the banks was, I think, in about 1929 during the Great Depression, or when the Great Depression really was getting kicked off. And because there was a run on the banks, the feds made changes to the banks so that we would not have another run on the banks ever. It doesn't mean that it won't happen, but now there are controls in place at the federal level for all the banks that will prevent that. So having some cash, yes, but I would not have a lot of cash on hand. Somebody who's got, 10, 20, $30,000 of cash on hand, well, that's a lot of money to have on hand. And it kind of makes, I would say, it makes you more of a target for someone to do the good old fashioned home invasion, to break in and take your cash. Even if you have a safe in your home where you can lock it up, well, then it's safer, it's more secure, but it doesn't mean that it's going to take you off that target list. So if there are people who are hoarding cash and you just feel more comfortable doing that, well, if that's your comfort level and that helps you sleep at night, then okay, I wouldn't really recommend it. But what I would recommend is if you are doing that, don't tell anybody. It's none of their business that you're saving cash. The more people hear that you've got this cash, the more of a target you become for somebody to break in and try to take it from you. So Christina, did I answer your question?
You did. Thank you very much.
Okay. So other thoughts or questions, or should I go on to something else here into the topic?
I don't see any other questions, but if you want to go ahead and
Yeah, so
give us a little bit more insight.
So let me touch on, there's been a lot of talk about another stimulus. Will there be another stimulus package from the federal government, or will there not? Who knows what is going to really happen? When all this began to hit in February, March, there was a moratorium on evictions. So if you had an apartment, the landlord, if they were getting some certain monies for that property, they could not evict you. All of that is going away. It's expiring. So now the evictions can begin, unfortunately. So will there be another stimulus? Will there be another, say, an extension of that eviction, uh, of the forbidden evictions? We don't really know yet what will happen there or not. Another stimulus, I don't know that we'll see another stimulus. Maybe we'll see one, but I don't expect that we will. At this point, if you look at our economy, the numbers all look pretty darn good, even though there's still a lot of people unemployed, even though there are companies who are still in the midst of struggling on how to just stay in business. Despite all that, if you look at all the ratios, the economics, and look at all the market data, all of that looks pretty darn good. But at the local level, it's still not good. So will there be another stimulus package or not? It's really impossible to say. I don't know if there will be. I do know that one of the unintended consequences of the last stimulus, and I've got a cousin who owns 3 restaurants in LA, in Los Angeles, and I called him the first week of May because California was going to reopen. He has 150 employees. He called them all to bring them back to work. Actually, he's got 141 employees. Of the 141 employees, when he called all of them to bring them back to work, 23 said, yes, we'll come back to work. The others said, no, I'm collecting more on unemployment without having to work. I'm not coming back to work. So that is one of the unintended consequences of the CARES Act that was signed on March 27th. Because of that, I think the chances of there being a second stimulus, I think the chances are very slim that we'll see another stimulus, at least as far as unemployment goes.
Oh, that's a little crazy.
It is crazy.
Any other questions from anyone? I haven't gotten any emails either, so don't be afraid. Also, if you want to unmute yourself and you'd rather talk to Armando directly, feel free to do so. We'll go ahead and answer questions for another 15 minutes or so. Oh, we have another one from Evelyn here. And then we'll get to your question too, Imelda, shortly. But Evelyn is asking, will we see another round of PPP for businesses?
I would not expect that we'll see that. I don't expect that we'll see it. If we did see something come out, it's going to be a lot more strict than the first one, because the first one that came out, a lot of companies that did not need the money, they got the money. So that was not what was intended when this was signed into law on March 27th. So if there were going to be another PPP, then I would expect it to have a lot more restrictions on it. But if it's worded correctly and drafted correctly, then it will be there for the companies who really need it, not the ones who don't. And Elizabeth, I see a note on here that Imelda, thank you for this note. Her note says that Governor Ducey that he signed an executive order to protect people from evictions until October. So Imelda, thank you for that. I was not aware of that. So thank you for that information.
Great. And so kind of going along with Imelda's comment to protect people from evictions, are there, I guess you could say, are there any legal consequences? How do you see that? Or do people also have to pay back those, I guess you could say, 3 months of rent along the road, or how would that work? And what do you think?
Well, I think that, and I've been doing a little bit of homework on this, and I would say that even though maybe those rents did not have to get paid, and evictions were stopped, the rent money is still owed to the landlord. And I don't want to make the landlord sound like the big bad wolf out here, because that's what they do to get money. But if you think about those different apartments and homes that people are renting, there's a landlord, somebody who owns that, but then often there's also a bank that lent money to that landlord so that they could buy the home and then rent it out. That bank still wants to get paid every month. And they're breathing down the neck of the landlord so they can get their monthly payment. And for that landlord to make the payment, then the landlord expects to collect the rent from the tenant. So there's this whole food chain going on that the landlords are the ones getting squeezed by right now when the renter is not paying. And I've seen nothing at the federal level, nothing from the feds that I've seen has said, banks, stop demanding payment from your landlords if they can't pay you for the mortgage on that house or on that apartment complex. I've seen nothing like that. Instead, what I've seen is the banks still look like they are fully protected. The bank's going to get their money either from that tenant indirectly or from that landlord. But no one has told the banks, back off, just give them a few months to kind of figure things out. I have not seen that at all, and I really don't expect to see that at all. So the tenant still owes the money, is my point.
Okay. What do you think this also affects rent on businesses? Because I'm not really aware of that occurring or happening. So do you see this also affecting businesses?
Right. Well, it's not really. It's the same food chain with businesses. Most commercial buildings, like I'm in an office building, and this building, I've met the owner. I don't know if he went to a bank to borrow money to buy this building and then lease, one of the offices to me or not, but he expects me to pay my rent every month. And then when he gets that money, it's either income to him or he's going to pay the bank back every month on the mortgage. I don't expect to see any disruption in any of that food chain because of any of this. I've seen nothing at the federal level that says there will be a disruption, meaning as a business owner, do I get my rent forgiven for 3 months? No. Does the landlord get his mortgage payment forgiven for 3 months that he owes the bank? No. There's been nothing on that at all. So the businesses out there that have commercial property, they still have to pay that rent. What they may be able to do is they may be able to go to their landlord and just say, hey, I'm having a real tough time. Can you work with me and maybe, let me pay half rent this month for the next 3 months? Because that kind of thing can be done, but you've got to go directly to the landlord and have that conversation with the owner of that property. But it's really on an individual business for actually an individual case-by-case basis, because all those buildings out there, all those restaurants that have leased property, they leased it from somebody. They've got to go to that person or that rental management company to try to negotiate some kind of relief. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay.
We have 10 more minutes or so.
Elizabeth, is there a way to know of the people on this webinar, is there a way to know how many have a business, or maybe they're thinking of starting a business? Are we able to somehow get that information, or do you see a list that kind of gives you an idea?
Yeah, we can definitely check and see who signed up on a registration list, or if you would like to share that information in the chat box, feel free to do so, please. So that way Armando knows exactly who's all attending here. So if everyone doesn't mind, we'll just share that in the chat box.
And Elizabeth, it's Christina again. Maybe really quickly, I didn't know if you and Armando and myself, we can put our screens in a view where we can see all the attendees. If you guys don't mind, you can see the reactions button at the bottom of your screen there. If you have an existing business, you're already a business owner and you have an established business, I think that's a question, one of the questions, right, Armando?
Right.
Maybe you can give a thumbs up like I am right now. Really quickly, and we will do a quick count. So if you have a business right now an established business. If you could give a thumbs up really quickly, that'll help Armando. We would appreciate it. We'll give everybody a quick minute to do that. And I know some of you have businesses and maybe you're struggling to see the thumbs up button here. But again, if you could help us out and give a thumbs up, if you can find that reactions button on the bottom of your screen, that would be great.
Imelda, Evelyn, Mabel also had her thumbs up. Christina also. Erica, thank you.
So it looks like maybe 4 or 5, Armando, if I counted right, Elizabeth?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, good. Thank you. Just trying to get a sense for, how to phrase my questions and answer the questions so that it's really more applicable to the people on this call, on this Zoom. Good.
So maybe, should we assume the rest of you, I don't know what your other question was, Armando, or if you're thinking of starting a business,
Right.
maybe give us a quick thumbs up too. If you don't have a business, but you're just kicking around the idea of starting one, maybe give us a thumbs up.
There we go. Claudia looks like she's looking into maybe starting up a business soon. Yep, she just said that on the chat box too. So she's thinking of starting a business.
Okay.
What suggestions do you have for her, Armando?
Well, the whole world got a little bit tossed upside down in the last 6 months, and it's gonna somehow restabilize. We don't know what it's gonna look like yet, but whenever there's anything like this that happens, it creates new opportunities and some things that we may never have thought of before. Just brand new businesses are going to emerge out of this that are going to be fantastic and phenomenal that we probably haven't even thought about, but they're just going to spring up. Why? Because somebody just had this idea. Hey, maybe I can do this. Maybe I should try this. And people are doing that right now today. So I would say that it's a great time to think about it, even though everything might look a little bit scary out there with the economy and the unknowns. But opportunity springs up in things like this. If you look, like I was looking over the weekend at apps for different purposes, apps are all over the place. You can start your own app, which would be your own business. You can start from home, just sitting there at your kitchen table, putting an app together on whatever you think might be useful to somebody else. But it's amazing what is out there that other people want that somebody just thinks about from, the kitchen table on a weekend. So it's a good time, I'd say, to kind of think about things. And like I said, a lot of the traditional business models have been very disrupted by all this. And maybe those traditional models, maybe they're not going to work going forward. We just don't know. But it's going to make way for new models for businesses to start. And that's the real beauty of something like this pandemic, shutdown, etc. It springs to life something brand new nobody ever even thought of before. So my advice or suggestion would be to just keep watching what's going on and just keep thinking of ideas, and don't rule things out that they might be dumb or stupid or meaningless ideas, because who knows what might come up that might be really, really successful because you thought of it and nobody else did. Or maybe you thought of it and somebody else thought of it too, but you took action on it to make it happen. And that could be all the difference right there.
That's really encouraging, Armando. Thank you. Tom looks like he has a question. Should I write out a business plan, and how or what tools to use now that we're thinking about starting businesses?
Yep. So a business, a lot of it's interesting. I remember seeing a survey years ago of the top 500 companies in the U.S. Half of them had a written business plan, half did not. Do you need a business plan? Not always. Is it helpful? Yes. because it can help you focus your resources and focus your mind. But you know what? Sometimes businesses just crop up and people go by the seat of their pants and they become super successful. But I am a proponent of a business plan, having a direction of where you want to go. If you don't really have an idea for what you want your business to be, I would throw that out the window and say, well, just look around at what's going on and look at the problems that you're hearing people talk about, and how could you maybe help that problem be better. Maybe you have a solution for their problem and maybe they just don't know about it. But I would listen, because where you're hearing people complain about things not working, that's an opportunity for you to come in and have a solution to alleviate that problem, to fix that problem and make that situation better. So
Wonderful.
I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you so much. Looks like we have 3 more minutes. Um, Let me just check and see if we have any other questions. Yes, we do. Is there a tax advantage to have a multiple owner LLC?
A multiple owner LLC by default becomes a partnership. And from a tax perspective, you're going to pay self-employment tax, which is going to be some of the highest taxes out there. What you could also do, though, is take the multiple owner LLC and put it into, and have a tax to, say, a C Corp or an S Corporation, which might be a better tax move. When you ask that question, it's got to be taken in the context of the broader picture. What do you think will happen with this business in, say, 5 years or 10 years? Are you going to build this business to sell it right away? Are you going to build this business to keep it forever? Are you going to build this business to get a paycheck, a monthly paycheck from this business, you know, of just a steady monthly paycheck as your primary source of income? Or is this going to be a secondary source of income? Are you going to bring in a family member to help you with this business? Or are you going to have employees with this business? So the question that you're asking is a good question, and it's really got to be taken in the context of, what am I really trying to get to? What is my desired end result? And part of it you want to think about is, when you get out of this business, how are you going to get out? Are you going to sell it? You're going to give it to your brother, your sister, your adult child? Are you going to sell it to your partners? Are you just going to walk away and get some residual income for life? All those things matter to answer your question. I don't mean to make it more confusing, but I would look at who your partners are on your multiple member LLC. It tells me there's at least 2 people, but it sounds like maybe possibly 3. And are you going to be in business with these folks for a long time, for a short time? How are you going to get income out? So it's kind of hard to answer that question just by knowing the question that you asked, because there's a lot more context that I don't know that makes it difficult to answer.
Okay. It looks like we're nearing the hour. Armando, really quick before we wrap up, would you mind sharing any tips or resources that you personally provide? I believe you have a YouTube channel, so maybe if you want to touch upon that really quick before we let everyone go.
Yeah, what I'll mention to people is that if you go, if you want to have a, you know, we do consults. Anybody on this, I'm happy to do a 20-minute discovery call with you. All you have to do is go to my website. On the front page, the home page of the website, on the lower left-hand corner, you'll see a button there that says book now or book appointment now. Just click on that, click on a 20-minute discovery call. You'll have to enter some information, enter the Arizona time zone as well. I'm not sure why you have to, but you have to. And then you can just schedule it. But then anybody on this call or on the Zoom could have 20 minutes with me where they can ask me whatever they want to, where it's a very private conversation and it's confidential, of course. But I would say that I'm happy to answer questions. And that would be a good place to schedule 20 minutes for a phone call.
Great. Also, if everyone, before you go, if you have any topics that you'd like for Armando to answer in the next session, feel free to drop those in here in the chat box, or feel free to email us as well. We'll also send you the information that Armando just shared about the 20-minute consult, along with the post-event survey, so that way we know exactly, you know, what kind of questions or topics to hit on. But before we go on, just wanted to mention that Armando and I will be on the Mari Rabago show this Thursday at noon. So we'll be talking all about our events with the chamber, and make sure to tune in for that on Thursday. Make sure to also check our calendar of events as well. We have plenty of events going on through the end of the month and next month as well. But our next Q&A session will be next Tuesday at 10. So please make sure to bring your questions along with you. On behalf of the chamber, thank you, Armando, for your time doing these Q&A sessions. These are valuable for all of our small business owners and our membership.
No,
So
you're
thank
welcome.
you.
I'm happy to help. You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up and wish everyone a great day. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. Bye now. Thank you.